Good morning. We're on the Mishnah, Sadik on Beis, 90a, top of the page. And after all this, after completing the whole Masechta of Gittin, finally we get to the reason. So when is a divorce justified? So Bishama, I remember Bishama says, "Lo yigarish adam es ishtay el imkein motzah ba'ervas davar." Well, imkein motzah ba'dvar erva. A person should only divorce his wife if he found something, an erva. It would be some sort of promiscuity or adultery. Shenemar kimotza ba'ervas davar. So when the Torah teaches the laws of get, the Torah says, "V'hayim loisim tzechem be'enav." She does not find favor in his eyes. Kimotza ba'ervas davar. The word is key. We'll explain that in a moment. Whatever the word key means, motza ba'ervas davar. He found he found there was something adulterous about her. There was something.
Rabbi, did you say page 90A?
90A.
And where on the page again, please?
Now we're on the second line, third
Thank
line
you.
actually. Fourth line actually. Okay. Now, what does the word key mean? There are four definitions to the word key. We'll explain in the Gemara, but the simple explanation of key is because. So she does not find favor in his eyes because there was an ervas davar. There was something promiscuous. That's the reason why she does not find favor, and that's the reason why the divorce is being given. Basil says, even if she burns the soup, that's enough of a grounds to give a divorce. Shenemar ki motza ba ervas davar. Basil understands that the word ervas davar means two things. It means either he finds something promiscuous in erva, or he finds davar, something that he doesn't like, and that something could be, she burns the food. Rabbi Kiva says you don't need any reason. Even if you find a woman that's prettier than the woman that you're married to, that's sufficient grounds to give a divorce. Shenemar, as the verse states, and it will be that she does not find favor in his eyes. Why is she not finding favor in his eyes? Presumably because he found a woman that's more attractive than her. Okay, Tanya. So now we get to this debate between Basil and Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says there needs to be a reason of erva, and Basil says any reason is enough. Tanya, Basil Beis Shammai. Basil says to Beis Shammai, davar. The Torah says davar is a thing, any reason, not necessarily one that's associated with erva. It says that there's a reason. It says the reason here is promiscuity. Basil responds, if it would have said erva but not said the word davar, a thing, I would think I would think the only reason why that you can give a divorce is because of erva. If she burns the soup, that would not be sufficient grounds to give a divorce. That's what the Torah has to say, davar, a thing. So in other words, Basil says there's two reasons here. Number one is an erva. Number two is a davar. What's a davar? Davar is a thing, anything. Whether that's burning a dish or whether it's something more serious than that. The ilunemar davar v'lo ervas. If it would have just said davar, a thing, in other words, you can divorce your wife for any reason, and it did not say the word erva, I would think mishum davar tinas la'achar, mishum erva lo tinas la'achar. If it would have just said the reason when you divorce your wife is because of a thing, so it could be anything, any reason is good enough. However, if you divorce your wife because of an erva, because of a suspicion of adultery, then we would not permit her to get married to somebody else. In other words, the Torah says as follows: if she doesn't find favor because you found a reason to divorce her, then she marries somebody else. But if the reason why you divorced her was because you found an erva, maybe then she would not be able to marry somebody else. That's what the Torah has to mention, that you can divorce your wife for two reasons, either erva or davar. And in both scenarios, she's able to after she leaves, she can go marry somebody else. In other words, even if you divorce your wife because of adultery, she's still permitted to remarry. And that's what the Torah has to say, both erva and davar. Ubeshamai, hi davar my avdilay. Okay, so what is Beshamai? Why does the Torah say davar if the main thing is erva? So Gemara says nemer kan davar, nemer lahal davar. It says davar, a thing with regard to divorcing a woman, and it says with regard to testimony of a monetary matter, it also says davar. You need two witnesses to establish davar, a monetary matter. Just like by monetary matters, you require witnesses, testimony. So too, with regard to testifying about the erva, the promiscuity, the adultery, you need two witnesses. Okay. Now, Beisil is still not convinced. Beisil miksiv erva bidover. According to Beisil says, it should have said you found an erva bidover with the thing, meaning with witnesses. It doesn't say that. It says ervas dover, and it seems to imply it's two separate things. Okay. Bishamai would argue though, Bishamai miksiv oy erva oy dover. According to Beisil, it means both. It means either one. So it should have said kimotza oy erva oy dover. He found either an erva or a dover, a thing. Meaning he burnt his pot, she burnt the soup or something. So what? So that's really a question of Hillel. Why does the Torah say ervas dover instead of saying oy erva oy dover? Hillel hachiksiv ervas dover the mashma hachim mashma hachim. Hillel says the reason why it says ervas dover is specific and not oy erva oy dover is specifically to tell me to understand it in both manners. In other words, to understand it as you can divorce your wife either for an erva or for a dover. And if you divorce your wife for an erva, that erva has to be established by a dover, which is two witnesses. Put together. Okay, next Gemara. Rabbi Kiva says that if you found a woman who's more attractive, what's the debate? The opinion of Rish Lakish. The Amar Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, ki mashma medalad l'shonis. The word ki has four different interpretations. Okay, 1 second. The first one is e, which is really the Hebrew version of im. It's if. For example, you have Rashi says, the Torah talks about somebody who sees his friend's animal stumbling. What does it say? It says, if you see your friend's thing, then you should help him stand it up. That would be E. Dilma is perhaps, but it's really less. It's sort of a question. 1 second. It's talking about, for example, when the Torah says, in other words, it's not an if, it's when you go into the land, lest you think that the nations are too powerful. And the word is ki there. Ki there can't mean if. It doesn't mean if you think that the nations are too powerful. It's much more of a when, but really a lest. It's a warning. Don't think that the nations, it's sort of a question. Are you going to think the nations are more powerful? Okay, then you have Ella, which is more like a but or rather. For example, you have, this is, by the way, I'm reading to you from the long Rashi on the right-hand side of the page. Avraham Avinu tells Sarah that she laughed. So she says, Loi. So he tells her, no, kitzachakt, rather you did laugh. You're saying you didn't. No, rather you did. Or but you did. And the last one is Daha, which is because. Okay. Beishamai Savri, Beishamai reads the verse as follows. V'haya im loisim tzechem be'einav. It will be that she does not find favor in his eyes. She's not attractive anymore. Why? Ki, because matzava ervas davar. Because he found an ervas davar, which is a promiscuity or adultery. So the key over here means Daha, because. Rabbi Kiva savar ki matzava ervas davar. Rabbi Kiva understands, 1 second. He says two things. It means as follows. He says, okay, so it's v'haya im leitzim zachem be'einav. It will be if she does not find favor in his eyes, and the word ki is also an if. So it would be effectively an or if he finds an erev hastavar, which means there's two separate things. One is an erev hastavar, which can mean like by Sil or by Shammai, either it means adultery or it means either adultery or she burnt the pot. Or alternatively, if she doesn't find favor in his eyes, meaning she's unattractive. Why is she unattractive? Maybe he found someone who's more attractive than her. Inami matzav erev. Okay. Now getting back to Beit Hillel. So Beit Hillel says you have to have a dover, a thing, or more like a reason. What happens if somebody divorces his wife without a reason at all, according to Beit Hillel? Do you actually have to have a reason, or is sort of anything is enough? He does not find any reason to divorce her. She doesn't burn the food, and she's not promiscuous. What's the story then? Because the Torah said, okay, this is with regard to. Let's be careful here. Eines here is rape, but it doesn't mean rape. The general word of eines is specifically raping a girl while she's in middle of puberty. And the Torah says not only is there are certain penalties, but also he's obligated to marry her. Obviously, she and her father have the right to refuse, but if them two do not refuse, then we force him to marry her for the rest of his life. Okay. So if he can't send her away for the rest of his life, and we understand that to mean that if he does divorce her, he's obligated to bring her back. Okay. Specifically, the Torah says that a man who rapes a woman, if they end up getting married, then if he divorces her, he has to take her back. But that's an exception that's made specifically for rape, not for anything else. And therefore, we see that even if he divorced her without a reason at all, my Ovid, what he did, and the divorce is valid. He doesn't have to take her back. Rabbi Misharsh says to Rava, in liba legarsha, if his heart is to divorce her, and she doesn't realize that, and they're still married, which I'm sure is saying she's serving him. Mahu, what's the story? Now, if you remember when we learned in, I believe it's in the Durham Daf Chaf Aleph, where we discussed the 9 midas. These are sort of the 9 despicable traits of those that are intimate with their wives. And one of them is this: someone who's intimate with his wife when he's intending on divorcing her and she doesn't know about it. It's a form of call it rape, seduction, deception, something like that. It's if she knows, that's a different thing. And if she knows and she agrees, that's fine. But if she doesn't know, it's deceptive. So what's the story? So Gemara says, he brought this pasuk, Al Takrash Al Re'echav, don't plot against your friend. Al Takrash Al Re'echav, don't plot against your friend evil. V'hu yeshev lebetach itach, and yet he's sitting there trusting you. In other words, this is obviously something that's wrong. A person should not be intimate with his wife if he intends on divorcing her, without letting her know at least. Tanya, Rameir says, just like there is people have opinions about eating, there are people have different opinions about what qualifies for divorce, or for what reasons they'll mistreat their wives. There's a person, a fly falls into his cup, he throws the whole cup out, when he doesn't drink it. This is the behavior of Papas ben Yehudah. Who is Papas ben Yehudah? I'm not going to tell you who it is, but we'll say that he is associated with the founder of a major religion. Okay, he might have actually been his mother's husband. Let's say, maybe she wasn't a virgin after all. Okay, and this is associated with a woman whose name was Miriam, Miriam. We won't translate that to English. You can read about. There's a few Gemaras to talk about Papas ben Yehudah. Anyway, what was he famous for? He got very angry at his wife. He used to lock her up in the house. Gemara says that his wife Miriam, she had an adulterous affair through the window bars. Okay, yeah, that was immaculate. Let's say. There is somebody who a fly falls into his cup, and he takes the fly out of the cup and he throws away the fly and he drinks the rest of the cup. This is typical behavior. A person doesn't lock his wife up into a prison. She talks to his brothers and his relatives, and he's fine. That's acceptable. However, so in other words, Papas ben Yehudah was extremely concerned that his wife not talk to any other man. And what he did was he literally locked his wife up in his house. Most people, they take out the fly and they drink the cup, meaning they allow their wives to have normal conversations with other men. However, there is a person, a fly lands in their plate, and they go ahead and grab the fly and eat the fly. Zui midas adam ra. This is the custom of an evil person. Basically, he sees his wife promiscuous, and he sort of enjoys it. What happens? He sees his wife walking around and her hair is uncovered. She's weaving in the marketplace. This is, she wears, I don't know what this is called in English. There's a word for it. She wears an article of clothing that covers her front and her back, but it doesn't cover the sides of her body. And she bathes with other men. So she's bathing in the bathhouse, obviously without clothes, with other men. That's obviously a high sign that she's engaged in adultery. And she bathes in front of other men. All these behaviors, there's a mitzvah, a person should divorce such a woman. Shenamar, as the verse states, because he found promiscuous behavior. And this behavior obviously is not something that a person should live with. He sends her from her house, and she will be to another man. The Torah calls him an ish achar, somebody else, meaning that he did not do the correct thing by marrying her. Why? Because the first guy removed, promiscuous behavior from his house, and the first guy removed promiscuous behavior, and the second guy brought it right in. Okay, if the second guy was worthy enough, he'll end up divorcing her as well. The second husband will hate her as well and divorce her. If he's not worthy, then she will bury him. As the verse states, or the second husband will die. He's worthy to die. The first guy removed promiscuity from his house, and the second guy brought it right in. He's Sunay Shlach, when there's hatred, send. What does that mean? Rabbi Yehudah says, Im Sinasa, if you hate her, then Shlach, divorce her. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, that the one who sends is hated. Sonay HaMeshalach. He's Sana Shlach. A hated person is the one to divorce. So in other words, who's the evil one here? It's the woman for getting divorced, or it's the man for divorcing his wife? There's no debate here. Habazog Rishon, Habazog Sheni. It depends if it's a first wife or a second wife. And this obviously is dependent. The Amar Rabbi Lazar says, "Kol megarish ishta rishona," someone who divorces his first wife. I feel him as beach married all of demise. Even the altar will shed tears over him. Shenemar, as the verse states, "V'zois shein is tasu." This you should do. Ksais dimo es mizbach Hashem. The tears are covering the altar of God, bechi with tears, va'anoka and pain, from turning to your offerings, and to take sacrifices from your hands. The Mizbech is crying and turning away from your sacrifices. Amartim, you'll say, Alma, what's the reason for this? Why is the Mizbech turning away? Why is the Mizbech covered with tears? Because God has testified between you and between the wife of your young years. Obviously, this is a reference to a first wife. Asher ata begataba, which you were treacherous, you betrayed. She is your friend, and the covenant of being your wife, of getting married. Okay, so before we end the parak, let's just understand here again. So, first wife, typically, like we saw in the beginning, first blood of Masechet Saita, typically is a more suitable candidate for marriage, and therefore, if someone divorces his first wife, he better have a good reason for it. Otherwise, the Mizbeach is going to cry over him for sort of betraying his young love. However, if it's a second wife, that the Talmudical understanding is that a second wife is sort of creating a marriage. It's not necessarily intuitive, sort of working together on a relationship. Obviously, they have they're suitable in the sense that Gemara says this is the marriage that's difficult for God to make, because He has to make the candidates suitable for each other. And it's very difficult after many years. Each one lived his own life to find them suitable. So therefore, the divorce of a second marriage is less problematic than the divorce of a first marriage, which is a much more intense betrayal. And that concludes the Masechta of Gittin. Mazel tov. Okay, I'll get another Gemara. Just hang on a second. We start Kedusha now. Oh, that's the guy. Okay. Okay, a few things about Kedushin before we start. First thing is that Artzah has a very good introduction, worthwhile to take a look. The first paragraph of Kedushin is basically about kinyanim. Kinyan is an act of acquisition. The act is used to acquire things that you actually own. It's also used to acquire shigudim, which are obligations, responsibilities. For example, in the case of marriage, you don't actually acquire the woman; you acquire certain responsibilities are created between the two sides of the marriage. Now, this parak specifically deals with a number of different acquisitions. What are these acquisitions? We start off with the acquisitions of kedushin. Then we go that's marriage. We get to the acquisitions of avodim, slaves, how to acquire property, how to acquire movable objects, and then of course we get into a huge side discussion, talking about different mitzvahs. Also, there's an extensive Gemara that goes through the source that which mitzvahs women are obligated to perform. A bunch of other things that and round out the first parak. Second parak talks about shlichus, using a messenger. So the beginning of the first parak deals extensively with kedushin, and then of course we transition into avodim, which is about 5-6 plots in about 2 weeks from now, I believe, and then we go all over the place. We go to acquiring land, acquiring movable objects, etc. So begin the first Mishnah. A woman is acquired in 3 ways. Obviously, this means her. One more last point she should bring, which we obviously mentioned many times before, which would be the understanding between kedushin and nisuin. So what's kedushin and what's nisuin? Kedushin is the erison. Same words. It creates a marital obligation, but without the marital privileges. They don't live together yet, but they're obligated to each other, and they're obligated to consummate that relationship at some later point. Violating kedushin or erison is the same capital punishment as violating the marriage itself. We call it an engagement. It's clearly not an engagement. It's much more of a marriage than an engagement is. And that's the first step of kedushin. Nisuin is sort of consummating the relationship. How is that done? There's two main components of how that's done. Number one is to bring her into your domain. This is something like a chuppah or yichud room, or literally to live with her, to be secluded with her, whether or not they're actually intimate or not, or otherwise. Okay, a woman could be acquired with three ways. She acquires herself with two different methods. How do you give kedushin? Three ways. The first one is kesef. You give an item of value. How much value? We'll get to it in a moment. Bishtar is you give a document. The document is useless and worthless. It just says it's the same thing as a divorce. It just says the opposite of divorce. You're married to me with this document. Ubibiya, or with an intimate relationship that's engaged in for the sake of kedushin. We'll soon see that this is not a recommended practice. We'll get to it in about a week and change. Okay, bekesef with an item of value. B'shamay says how much value? B'dinner or b'shava dinner. You need one dinner, or the equivalent amount. What do you say? Something that has the value of one dinner. Basil says b'pruta u'b'shava pruta. With a pruta is a copper coin, or shava pruta is something equal to the copper coin. The kamahi pruta, how much is this copper coin? If you take a silver isser and you divide it up into eighths, you get these 8 copper coins. One of those copper coins is sufficient for kedushin. The koine etz atzma beget u'b'misas habal. She acquires herself with the divorce or with the death of the husband. A yavama is acquired with an intimate relationship. The koine etz atzma, she acquires herself with chalitza or b'misa yavam if all the potential yavamin die. Maybe there's one, maybe there's more than one. Then she acquires herself, and she can marry whoever she pleases. Like Rashi points out, Maimer, which is sort of like a kedushin, is not actually a kinyan. Maimer is sort of a person who wants to do yibam. They give the Maimer kedushin first, but it's a rabbinical kedushin. It does not have any severity. Okay. Ha'ishaneknes, a woman is acquired. Ma'ishna hocha l'tani ha'ishaneknes, ma'ishna hosan l'tani ish mekadesh. Why over here does the Mishnah? Okay, so the first parak talks about a woman being acquired. The second parak talks about the same thing, but from the male perspective. It says ish mekadesh, and the question is, the language is different. What are we talking about? Are we talking about a kinyan or kedushin or a kedushin? Obviously, it's the same thing we're talking about. But why is the terminology used different? Why over here do we use the word kinyan, acquisition, and in the next parak we use the word mekadesh? Kedushin. Because one of the ways to acquire for a woman to receive kedushin is through kesef, an item of value. Okay, the kesef, and what's the source of the item of value? How do we know that you can marry a woman using an item of value? Gomar kicha misayafra. We learn out from the Avram Avinu buying the field from Ephron. Yet you bought a cemetery, which is a very interesting observation. Why marriage is learned how to buying a cemetery. Very there's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of very deep things going on here. Okay, brother, the woman's womb. What's that called? What's the word in Hebrew for woman's womb? It's 2 different words. One is called a rechem. The other one is called a kever, which is a tomb. Okay, same word. Okay. Just to whet your appetite. There's a lot of depth going on here. Why this is the word? Okay, it says when a person is getting married, if a person acquires to acquire, when Avram Avinu is buying the cemetery from Ephron, what does he buy? I'm giving you the money of the field. Take it, acquire it on my behalf. The kicha ikra kinyan, and we see here that kicha, this acquiring is called a kinyan. The verse states, Hasada asher kana Avram. When we talk about the field that Avram bought, he took it, meaning kach. And what do we call that? Asher kana. He acquired it. It was a kinyan. Alternatively, if we know that Avram Avinu bought a field with a cemetery in it, what does it say? Sades bekesef yiknu. It says that the fields with money will be acquired. Kinyan. So because we see that the word kinyan is used to describe an acquisition, so Tani, the verse, the Mishnah begins with ha'isha niknas. A woman acquires. A woman is acquired. Okay, so fine. Okay, I understand. So we understand why the word kinyan is used. That's only half the answer, though. What about the flip side? So the second parak begins with ha'ish mekadesh. A man gives kedushin. What exactly does that kedushin mean? Why do we use the word mekadesh? Why don't we use the word ha'ish kaina? A man acquires kinyan. So the Gemara says mikara tani lishna d'oraisa. Initially, we use the biblical term, which is kinyan. L'b'sayif tani lishna d'rabbanan. In the end, we use the rabbinical terminology. Umay lishna d'rabbanan. What is the rabbinical terminology? The asur lo akula alma kehektish. You forbid her to the rest of the world like hektish. So, in other words, the Torah says that the Torah calls the creation of an erison kinyan. The rabbis call the creation of an erison kedushin, and therefore they use the second parak uses the rabbinical term, which is kedushin, mekadesh. Because why is the word kedushin used? Because you forbid her. The act of kedushin is to separate her, to make her forbidden to everybody else and holy to you. Okay. Okay, so now we understand why the word kedushin is used in the second parak and why the word kinyan is used in the first parak. But why do we frame it differently? In the first parak, we talk about it from the woman's perspective, ha'isha niknas. And in the second parak, we talk about it from the man's perspective, ha'ish mekadesh. So why is that the case? Why isn't the first parak also a man will acquire? Because we wanted to point out the end of the Mishnah of the kainas atzman b'didah, tananami reish b'didah. When we talk about her acquiring herself, we talk about it from her perspective. She acquires herself in two ways, either with the divorce or with the death of the husband. So therefore, the first part of the Mishnah, we talk about the woman's perspective as well. Okay, fine. So let the Mishnah say that the man acquires or gives the woman herself. He's makna. He provides. He releases her from her obligations. So Gemara says, because one of the ways that the woman acquires herself is through the death of the husband. He doesn't release her. Sort of God releases her. It's not the man doing an act to release her from her obligations. And therefore, we talk about it from the woman's perspective. Another possibility is, we talk about the husband acquiring, we would think that maybe the husband could force a woman to accept kedushin. She has to willingly accept the kedushin. You cannot force the kedushin upon her. Okay, we'll stop here. See you tomorrow.
Wow.
Okay, hopefully we try to keep about half an hour to 3/4 of an hour ahead. So that in the future, things, if